You're listening to the CINIKRADIO podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
And you are listening to episode 44 of the CINIKRADIO podcast, and I'm your host, Cynic. And with me, as always, the largest consumer of fermented crab in all of Minnesota, my friend and yours, Igri. Jules and Ryan are here, and we are set to discuss the hell out of a very special reunion episode of Game of Thrones called Eastwatch. Because we are the CINIKRADIO podcast, and we want you to know in these troubled times, when people have different opinions on what's wrong with the world and how it could be fixed, to us, it doesn't matter if you spend your time riding a dragon or your brother. Just be kind and decent to one another. Like, listen, and subscribe. Most importantly, enjoy the show. And it's time for the CRP's vague and brief recap. Jaime suffers from post-prick depression after his fireside chat with the Queen of Thorns. Arya's home, but hide the sharp objects. That means you, Sansa. Jon and Daenerys have a meeting of the minds, and who knew burning the innocents with dragonfire won't win you the hearts and minds of the common folk. Grab the gold, but leave the dick on. The Lannisters suffer a major setback, and this all leads to Season 7, Episode 5, Eastwatch. After an amazing episode last week, they gave us a chance to catch our collective breath. We pick up the story in the aftermath of the Loot Train barbecue. Last we saw Sir Jaime, he was a little worm on a big freaking hook. Fortunately for him, Bronn fishes him out. IG, what brought you more joy? The fact that they didn't make you wait for resolution for what happened with Jaime, or the fact that Bronn agreed with you 100% that charging Dany and her dragon was a fool's errand?
Well, I got to go with Bronn agreeing with me 100% because anytime anybody agrees with me, it's a win, right? Right? So, really, I mean, we all knew Jaime was going to live. I mean, I'm pretty sure the whole internet knew Jaime was going to live. I mean, there's no way with the way that people have gone out, main characters have died in this series, that they're going to let Jaime go just like that. It's got to be more dramatic. There's got to be more stuff going on, and you got to actually see the death. I think the only death we haven't seen that we know happened is Stannis, because you saw the sword come down, but you didn't see it hit Stannis. But everybody else has been dramatic, and everything leading up to Stannis' death was dramatic. So I'm going to go with, it was a fool's errand. Yeah, you get your shot. Not a good shot to take, you know. I mean, sometimes you got to cut your losses and run home and get some aloe to put on that burn.
Jules, did it seem a little bit odd that he was less concerned about burning and more concerned about drowning when Bronn pulled him out?
It was definitely a bizarre reaction. I had to rewind that for a second because I was like, did he just say that Bronn almost killed him? Because clearly that dragon had more of a ability to kill him than Bronn was throwing him in the water. So certainly he seemed a little bit blasé about that and a little bit, I guess probably just out of sorts after everything he had just seen happen and watch happen. It's easier, I guess, to sit and blame Bronn for almost killing him than what he actually just witnessed with his own two eyes with the dragon and everything.
Ryan, listen to me. See you next Tuesday until I'm paid what I'm owed. A dragon don't get to kill you. You don't get to kill you. Only I get to kill you. Do you believe that Bronn only cares about the money owed and the promises made, or is there a bond forming between Jaime and himself?
I think it's a mix of the two. I think that Bronn is a sellsword, obviously. So for him, the most important thing is that he gets his money. But you can't help but see that there's a bond forming between he and Jaime. There was a bond between he and Tyrion that also didn't stop him from going for his money. So I think that, at the end of the day, the money is the most important thing to him, and he's going to get what he's owed. But I don't think that he is, I think he'll do what he can to not, cross Jaime or sacrifice what relationship they do have. But he does want his money, and that's what he's in it for.
See, I think the money is just an excuse. I think the money's an excuse so he doesn't look soft, because I don't think he wants people to know that he cares about them. So I think it's quite the opposite. I think that, the money, he wants to get paid still. Yes, he wants to get some land and titles and everything else. But he does care about Jaime, and it's more of that than the money.
Well, now that Tyrion's position is changed in the world, Jaime is 100% where his bread is buttered. You're not going to find a better gig than following a Lannister around and doing his dirty deeds. So I do believe that there's a certain amount of kinship there, but I also believe that the money is probably too good to pass up. I mean, if you look at it, there's probably not many people left in the realm with any kind of cash on hand.
I have a question too. Like, if if Tyrion, who obviously has the upper hand in this shit, like as far as having the dragons and everything right now, if Tyrion asked Bronn to switch sides, I wonder which way Bronn would fall.
I think he stays Team Lannister only because Westeros is his home. It's not a guarantee that Daenerys is going to win this war. And where does that leave him? Because obviously he can't return to Westeros if they lose, right? IG, dragons are where our partnership ends. I'm not going to be around when those things start spitting fire on King's Landing. Bronn, much like you and I, is a realist. But one dragon, 100 dragons, is there anything imaginable that will get Cersei's ass off that Iron Throne?
Death. I think death might be the only thing to pull her off the throne. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, she may have other ways to survive. I mean, she obviously could have just, when Daenerys came back, she could have just decided to go over to Dragonstone, bend the knee, relinquish the throne. Everything would have been done. She could have lived, kept Casterly Rock, been a house in the Seven Kingdoms. But that's not Cersei. Cersei's going to war. Cersei's going to fight. Cersei is willing to sacrifice everything and everyone. And it's unfortunate because I think the only way this ends is with Cersei either winning or dead. And the thing is like we were talking last season, there's no way, but we're shown there's a way. Even with this big loss from last week, she's not giving up. And I think she always has a way of pulling out some plan that just surprises all of us. And it's happened so many times already this season that we're like, oh my God, how did she figure that out? I still think it's a spy. I still think it's Tyrion.
No.
Yeah, no. But here's the thing. It's going to be somebody. There's got to be some. You can't make that many right calls in a row.
Cersei seems to be the son that Tywin always wanted. Unfortunately, it came after his death, but she's really kind of coming to her own as far as being a Lannister. You know, she's plotting, and she would make old Papa proud there. A somber hand of the Queen does the walk of shame across the battlefield. He's just won his first military-led battle. What's got the imp so down? Jules, is it the reality of what lies in front of him or all around him, or is it the destruction that may lie ahead that has him so upset?
Well, here's what I think. I think that when you would read about dragons or hear about dragons in this like tall tales, it's one thing. To actually walk through the ashes of a dragon's wrath and then to walk through the ashes of the people that were your very own men at one point, that would have to be very sobering and really just shocking in a way that it would almost be hard to process it at that point. So I do think that it's definitely the fact that he's walking through all of this and you're like, I cannot believe the utter destruction this one dragon can do, let alone the fact that Tyrion does know she has 3. It could be the end of a lot, depending on which way Daenerys wants to go with this. And it's certainly, he foresees the end of his family, mainly Jaime. I don't believe he cares about Cersei so much, but certainly he knows this is going to be it for Jaime. And he's on the side that is going to kill his family. It's very hard, I'm sure, to process all of this.
Well, even before we get to the next scene, and I'm going to throw you a bonus question, Jules, even before we get to what lies directly ahead of us, at this point, after seeing that, do you think he fears Daenerys a little bit?
I would. I mean, I don't think it would be possible to know that she has the power she does behind those dragons without also having the reality to know if it could go bad. She could have the power. She could turn into the Mad King herself, and she has the dragons now. She has the power to decimate everything. Those dragons are on her command. So I think you would have to be a little bit afraid. I don't think you could sit there and not feel some fear there.
If he's going to advise her, if he's going to be hand, he's going to have to learn to overcome that. And I know that they talk about that later. But that's the thing. I mean, he's got fear. And you know, I mean, granted, this is all your countrymen. So these are people that he might know personally, a whole bunch of them. He might not know them really well, but he knows who they are. They are Lannisters and Lannister army. At that moment, I'm not sure whether he knows whether or not Jaime's alive or dead, because he just watched Dragonfire shoot at where Jaime was going. Maybe he even believes that his brother might be hurt. So he might be downtrodden for a whole bunch of reasons. And then, there's just so many things going on that, and just like Jules said, seeing that utter destruction, nothing has shown any destruction like that. Even when he enacted wildfire out in the Battle of Blackwater Bay, that destruction, although violent and fierce, was nowhere near as fierce and certainly not as precise as the dragon itself. They had to trust that the boats were going to end up in the right area to make it work in Blackwater. This dragon can aim. So it really is a lot of things going on where you really have to be concerned. Granted, they didn't burn a village. They didn't go and attack anybody that wasn't quote-unquote military. They went after troops. And in war, I guess, troops killing troops is okay.
Daenerys of 1,000 Titles has the survivors of the Lannister cookout rounded up and gives them the choice. Bend the knee or be put in the world's worst tanning bed, which to me is the Nevada sun. Ryan, let's deal with Daenerys' ultimatum first. Do you agree with her uncompromising kneel or burn stance? We've discussed at length before how fear only inspires a certain amount of loyalty.
I do agree with her stance. I think she needs to take a very firm stance, especially with the lords in Westeros. But I think that she's giving them the option. I mean, she's not going full Mad Queen and kind of just killing them, but she's giving them the option. Now, obviously, it's not much of an option. It's bend the knee or die. So they're not she's not really giving them much of a choice, but she is giving them that choice. And I think that, she runs the risk of appearing to be like a mad queen, and she runs the risk of you're trying to rule by kind of an iron fist and force people into kind of loyalty. But that this is how she's going to have to win the war, especially with soldiers. If she can have them cower in fear, then they're not going to stand up against her. So if that's what it takes to win the war, it's war. And this is what, these are some of the things it'll take, but it's better than torching the rest of the army to just get rid of the army. So I think that, she's in a tough position as a leader, but I think that in this world, it's the right thing to do. And she does a good job of explaining that, I'm not the person that Cersei's told you I am, and I'm going to give you the choice. But, she does have to maintain, her own strength, and she does. So in that way, she does have to give them the let them know, like, if you're going to follow Cersei, then you're going to burn, but I'm going to give you the option to follow me.
Yeah, but her choice isn't much of a choice at all. That's like me going to, do you want to go to Dairy Queen or do you want to go to Cold Stone Creamery? Either way, you're getting fucking ice cream.
It's not. No, it's absolutely not. But, at the end of the day, she could have, it could be, look, you guys are Lannister soldiers. You're against me. You're all going to die. So alternatively, I mean, what's the alternative? Bend the knee or go back to King's Landing, go back to Lannisport. Like she's in a position where she doesn't have much of an option, but by at least giving them, by saying, look, you're free, you will be part of this new world that I'm going to build. You just have to bend the knee. That's the only thing she can tell them. Otherwise, again, she's just going to let them turn around, go back and fight against her again. Like that. I mean, there's not much else. So yeah, it isn't much of a choice, but it's the other alternative is her just, again, go full Mad Queen and kill them all and burn them all, which would be really easy. She's got Drogon there. I mean, that's the other alternative. And so I would think that those soldiers intellectually probably can understand that. And, at the end of the day, that's her choice. I mean, that's what she can do.
IG in the end, was Randall Tarley just looking for a son he'd be proud to burn next to? I mean, what did you think of the scene and his decision not to comply?
I loved it. I mean, because he had made a decision, and his decision was to go against a house that he'd pled fealty to, right? To go against the Tyrells. So he decided to switch sides, and he basically was saying, I'm going to pay for my decision. I realized that I made a decision. I'm going to stick by my decision, whether it was a good or a bad decision. But I know I made it. I'm going to stand here, and I made my bed. I'm going to sleep in it.
Yeah, like I'm not just going to keep flip-flopping.
Right. He said, this is the decision I made. I'm going to stand by it. And I like that. It showed the strength of the Tarley family. And in a way, even gives me more faith in Sam.
Do you think that if Tyrion had, if he'd argued, well, okay, if this happens, then Tarly inherits Horn Hill, he's the new lord. Do you think that that would have convinced Randall Tarly to bend the knee?
No.
Well, his disdain for Sam is so much that maybe that would be enough, but no, probably not.
He came into the show an uncompromising prick. He can say what he wants about Daenerys having savages at her back and her being a foreign invader. To me, he only jumped because they offered him Warden of the South. So I think you're right, Ig. He didn't want to be a flip-flopper. He's going to live with this decision. But at the same time, I just think that if I gave him the same option, Dairy Queen or Cold Stone Creamery, he's going to say neither. 9 times out of 10, because that's just who he is. He's just one of those hard to get along with people. That's why you would take a slightly able-bodied, let's not go crazy in Sam, but, a very smart son and just cast him off because he's not who you want him to be. He was just a fucking jerk, and I'm glad he got what he got. You will not trade your honor for your life. I respect that. Jules, as a parent, were you a little surprised he didn't try slightly harder to talk Dickon out of his decision? I mean, a family that burns together, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, it's hard to say. I think Dickon has sort of the same the way about him that Randall did, and I think he was stern and believed in the choice that he was going to make right up until he saw that dragon turn towards him. But I think that he certainly, I mean, what's he going to do? Sit and argue with him for 10 minutes? Like, no, I told you not to do it. But Dad, I am. But no, I mean, it's like he made his choice. And I see that Randall's probably a man of few words. He told him no once. Dickon didn't listen. And it's like, okay, well, I guess we're in this together then. And
well, Iggy, if some of your kids, I'm not going to say all of them, but if some of your kids were going to follow you to the fire, would that maybe make you bend the knee then? Like, all right, I rethought my decision, I'll bend my knee.
Well, one, I don't know if that was an option at that point. I think his fate was sealed. But, I don't know, putting my children up in the same thing might change my mind. But at the same time, my children deciding that I'd made the right decision and following me into the doom, as it were, might make me just, even though it's only going to be for a moment, I'm going to have a little bit extra pride in my children. And that's what I think, that not so much that he's a man of few words, and you told me once, and okay, I think the pride in standing behind your family's decision to pick a side and stand by that decision, I think that's more what it showed to Randall for me. So, Randall's parting moments gave me a little bit of pride in that family that, we're going to make a decision, and it may not have been the popular decision, it may not have been the right decision, but they stood by it as a family all together.
You are the future of your house. This war has already wiped one great house from the world. Don't let it happen again. Bend the knee. Ryan, despite the strong objection from her hand, Daenerys burns Team Tarly to the ground. Is this her inner Targaryen coming out, or is this a statement you felt that she needed to make?
There have been examples of this kind of inner Targaryen for years, when she burned the slavers. So that that it started then. So it's part of her MO. She has, the greatest weapon in Westeros and the greatest weapon that Westeros has seen in hundreds of years. And so she's going to use it. So it kind of makes sense in this situation where she's got the dragon's just decimated this army. And if you're not going to, bend the knee, it was actually kind of merciful using Drogon, because it took 2 or 3 seconds for them to be incinerated. So it actually wasn't, it had the bells and whistles of a horrible death, but it really wasn't, not a bad way to go. Like if I'm like, all right, what's a good way to go? Dragon's a good way to go. You count to 3 and you're incinerated. So I think she needs, in a way, she kind of, it works for her because, again, that's her MO. That's what she does. And it's something that every single one of those soldiers will go back and tell everybody they know what they saw, and it will scare everybody. And yeah, we don't, she doesn't necessarily want to rule by fear, but it doesn't hurt to have, an entire country worried that if they don't bend the knee, they're going to, suffer the same fate.
But isn't that the downside of that? If that's what all those people are going to go back and tell them, that's the kind of stuff that leads to uprising. And I think that's what Tyrion was trying to tell her, is like, put him in chains and put him in a dungeon, and people change their minds a lot of times when they're there. And that's the thing, is Tyrion was trying to tell her, look, don't just kill people. They're stopped. They're standing here. They have no weapons. They're not a danger to us anymore. We can, those that don't want to comply, we can hold as prisoners, and maybe they'll comply later, or maybe we do something else later. But killing them out in front of all those people that are surrendering and bending the knee and choosing a side, they're going to go back and tell their people, and that leads to revolt. That leads to people that don't have a love for their leader. They have a fear of their leader, and that leads to bad things. So I fear for it quite a bit.
I disagree in this situation. I think that that nobody's wrong in this situation. I think Tyrion's absolutely right to be afraid of the consequences. But you have a situation, nobody has love for Cersei. She's not this adored leader that the entire, that people will rise up and fight against Daenerys. And, I guess it comes down to the means to an end. And what Tyrion's trying to stop Daenerys from doing is just, sacking King's Landing, burning it to the ground, and taking the Iron Throne. So if that means that these are some of the steps that she needs to take, and that in order to get that, then I think it works. At the end of the day, there's going to be no uprising against her right now. I mean, it's just not. It's unrealistic. She's got too much power. She has too much strength with the Unsullied and with the Dothraki. It's a matter of, if she is a bad ruler, then that, let's say she does win the Iron Throne, and she continues to use Drogon and the dragons as an example, and does become kind of more of a mad queen and burn anybody alive that doesn't listen to her, then okay, maybe that's something in the future. But as far as taking the throne, I don't think it'll matter if they go back to, if these guys go back to Lannisport and say, hey, look at what we saw. I don't think that all the common people are going to start rising up and grabbing their pitchforks and, running after Drogon. I think they're going to sit right where they are and wait for this war to end and see who wins and where they are.
You don't ever want anybody to fall in love with the I win button, and the dragons are the I win button. That's the easy out. I think Tyrion's kind of right in the aspect that, look at what happened to Ned. Ned was the hardest screw to ever walk Shawshank Prison, and he even broke in a dungeon after a little while. He even found reason to say, I'm sorry and I'm a traitor. And I think you could do that with a lot of people. They're just coming out of a battle and they're scared out of their minds, but the adrenaline's still going, and you're giving them this choice. Well, you've just been bested, so right away pride's going to kick in, and you're going to be like, well, you're still not taking me alive. But if you would have given them a month or so to think about it, a lot more would have bended the knee. They would have bended the knee rather than burn them alive, poor and defenseless. I get that this was the first time out. This is the first appearance she's made in Westeros. She wanted to come out strong and kind of make a statement. I personally didn't agree with the tactic. I understand the thinking and reasoning behind it, but I really think that it's setting a bad tone, seeming that's what your father was known for. You know what I mean? You can't follow in your father's footsteps and say, but I'm not him, so, you don't compare me to him. So, IG, Jaime rushes home to play I've Got Bad News, Worse News with Cersei. Oh, that war you needed to win? Well, it's unwinnable. You remember that brother we cast out and falsely accused of killing our son? Well, he's kind of innocent of that. As the game of uncompromising Queen Chicken continues, did it shock you that none of Jaime's profound new information even fazed his sister in the least?
Well, at this point, I think she's kind of no fucks given Cersei. And you can say whatever you want to her. You can give her any bad news you want. You can tell her anything else you want to tell her. She's like, okay, I'm still in the Red Keep. I'm still technically sitting in the chair. I've got buckets and buckets of wildfire. Whatever. If I got to kill everybody to keep sitting in this chair, I'll kill everybody. And all this news is just more information that's going to make me hate everybody. And that's just what it seems like. Like, I'm not even sure, even though they're still physically, romantically involved, Jaime and Cersei, I think that's just something she's used to doing. I don't think it matters to her. I don't think Jaime matters to her all that much. I think she's starting to separate herself from everything, which seems more Mad King-like to me, at least from the small bits we've seen of the Mad King, where he's kind of alone and like everybody else is kind of pushed away from him and he's making crazy decisions. Now, I know in that time, Tywin was really doing most of the actual duties because Tywin was hand of the king to the Mad King. But Cersei is really just kind of being crazy. And the only one that's matters to her right now, I think, is the Maester, or the anti-Maester, I guess he would be, because he's not really a Maester, Qyburn. And he just feeds into it. He's like, yeah, let's do some more fucked up shit. He's all about it. He's like, yeah, look, I made you a zombie. I'm teaching you how to kill dragons. Let's do some fucked up shit.
Back at Dragonstone, Jon makes nice with Drogon, and we're treated to our first of many reunions in the show. Jules, what did you think of Jorah's homecoming, and do you believe that the two of them can bury the past behind them?
I was happy to see Jorah. I was kind of not expecting to see him this quickly. I don't know. I guess I kind of figured somewhere along the way he was going to be meeting up with other people that were going to eventually help Dany in this, but it is what it is. And so I was glad to see him, that he had actually made it back to her. Do I think that their relationship will be back to the way it was? I do. I think that he has proven himself time and time again to sort of put the fact that he had betrayed her at one point in the very beginning out of her mind. She seemed very happy to see him. She seemed very happy to have him be well again, not have the grayscale. And so I think I definitely think that their relationship can go back to the way it normally was, which was him following her like a lost puppy and her patting his head.
Him right back into the friend zone, right? Because that's where he lived. Jorah is friend zone level
Exactly.
9,000.
I like the scenes though with them just throughout the episode. I think they have great chemistry. And even though it kind of gave me more of the feels than it should have, considering like it was only like 6 episodes ago that they left each other. So it's not like, I guess as far as a viewer that they've been apart for that long, but they really do have very good chemistry. And, how much he adores her and slash loves her is very apparent. And then, and how much he cares for him is very much apparent. So I think I really liked the scene and that reunion again, even though it was something that as a kind of viewer, it wasn't that long ago. It's not like, Arya and Sansa who even waiting 7 years to get back together. So I really did. I enjoyed that scene.
Well, Ryan, I think the feels came from, watching him go through the removal of the grayscale. So seeing what he had to go through to be able to go back to her, I think that lent into, it's only been that many episodes, but what he had to go through to get there. I mean, the rest of them had to go through stuff too, but none of them had to have basically the top 8 layers of their skin ripped off.
Yeah, he was in the process of dying when she left. There was no known cure for that. So she was saying goodbye for good the last time she saw him, even though she did the whole, I order you to go cure yourself, a lot of good that's going to do. Ryan, at the Citadel, the Maesters discuss Bran, the letter sent from the North, and are very dismissive about the warning about the Army of the Dead. Are the Maesters just oblivious to the fact that Rome is burning? Does their let's wait and see approach frustrate you as much as it does Sam?
It frustrates me a lot, and I'm wondering if it's bad writing or if this is one of those things I want to know when the next couple books come out, if the Maesters are as dismissive in the books as they are to Sam, or if this is just an easy enough out for Sam to leave the Citadel and go on his own to help. But you would think having all the knowledge of in the world there as much as possible that they would view this as more of a threat. And so I'm a little frustrated as a viewer, and again, I guess we won't really have answers to this for a while, but I feel like it's just bad writing to have them kind of sit there and just laugh at him. Like they should know this. They should know that the long night it's happened. They should know about the White Walkers, and the fact that they're completely dismissive of Sam, who says he's actually seen them, just bothers me. So I think it's one of those things that was a little bit of a strike against the episode just in general. It's like, why these are pretty dumb Maesters if they're completely ignoring it and dismiss it as any threat at all. It bugs me.
Well, they have a member of their Brotherhood up there, even though he's probably a lower end Maester because we're not going to send the top guys to the north. But they have somebody up there saying, hey, we should look into this. Could they spare maybe one of the 30 that are sitting around the table and send them up there and kind of check out what's going on rather than just dismiss it outright?
See, I think that this is the Maesters, as Sam pointed out, like they're very respected. They are the top of the heap when it comes to what people, are willing to believe. They're a trusted news source, if you will. So I think that they are probably slower to react to everything. As the Archmaester had pointed out an episode or two ago, yeah, we've heard, these stories before. Everyone always thinks the end of the world is coming when the long winter comes. So I can understand them being a little bit slow to react to just another threat. However, if you have somebody right in your midst, standing there staring at you, being like, yeah, I saw him, I fought him, I killed one, you would think that they would have, a little bit more of an interest in listening to what he said instead of being so dismissive of it. It's one thing to have like a raven come and say, yeah, there's this threat and some kid is saying that he's a three-eyed raven, but to have somebody actually standing in the room with you telling you he has seen them, it seemed pretty irresponsible.
I don't know. I don't even think it's lazy writing, because this really seems, it rings true even today. Like, if you think about it, if we all tried to take our history only from a 200-year-old history book, and that was the truth, and there is no change to what it said 200 years ago, because that's what the Maesters are living on. We got all these books here that are written over this period of time, and some are recent, but that's just the history that happened then. They aren't going back and researching what happened in the past. They're like, that already happened. Somebody wrote that down. But it might have been written incorrectly. It might not be full. So it's almost like, the people that want to go against climate change saying, well, that's not happening. That's not real. Well, but it is. And the stuff's, but we didn't write that, so we don't believe it. Those guys wrote it, so it's not true. Like Bran wrote this letter. It's not true. Even, what's a three-eyed raven? They don't know nothing about that. I don't think the Maesters know anything about them or like the children of the forest. I don't think they're anywhere in believing that they created White Walkers or any of that stuff. We know that stuff because they showed it to us. I think the Maesters are like this real closed-minded scientific community that isn't willing to give credence to anything that they didn't discover.
I agree with what you're saying, but I also take issue with the fact that it's like they know dragons are now around and they haven't been around for hundreds of years. So it's like these are, real threats that are coming back and they're plausible. They're talking about knowing that these dragons burnt the Tarleys alive. So they know it's a real thing. And so I feel like, you have to confront yourself with the fact that it's a possibility. And again, like I said, Sam has seen one. He fought one. He killed one. He's right there.
They're the scholars of this world, and they look at the amount of books and the knowledge that they should have. So to be that closed-minded just strikes me as strange. Like, I feel like they, I can understand, saying, okay, let's take a look at this and not, send all the armies up north. Like he even said, maybe this is just a plot by Daenerys to get the armies up north. So I can understand being somewhat skeptical, but to be outright dismissive like that just strikes me as weird. Because again, I think they would have to have, there should be some knowledge of the past, and that this is something that's a possibility. And again, if you have somebody there who has seen them, to completely, not lend it, give any credence to that and just dismiss it, it just doesn't. Again, to me, it's like bad writing. It's just like lazy writing. Let's just get this out of the way. Which, unfortunately, for this season, I love the season so far, but that's my biggest issue is there are a lot of things that happen just to kind of get this, just to move things along rather than let things play out as I think they really would in a situation in I don't want to say a real world, but even in this world up until this season, things aren't playing out quite the way I would expect. And a lot of it seems to be done for convenience, for time. We're like, all right, let's just get to this next plot point. But in order to get to that next plot point, we'll have a situation where you kind of have, again, some kind of sketchy, lazy writing.
Well, and I picked up on another one of your pet peeves, Ryan, and that's them playing loose and fast with time again. I mean, they dismiss Sam, and then he walks out the door, and they're like, didn't his father and brother just die? Wasn't that like a day ago? How the hell are they going to know? And who told them? Did they turn into Maester CNN or Maester Fox News or something? How did they know? That was terrible. So the plan is we're going to bring the dead to her. All right, we're going to have a CRP huddle here. So, all right, I've got this plan. We're going to wander into the Underdark where it's really dangerous and really cold. We're going to be in the wild. and we're going to sneak up on one of these undead soldiers, I guess presumably with a sack. And we're going to put that guy in a sack, and then we're going to take him south of the wall and thousands of miles to King's Landing. Ready? Break.
Go.
IG, do you agree with this master plan, or just disagree and think it's batshit crazy?
It's a little Scooby-Doo. It's a little odd. They got to do something, though. And that's the thing, because, I mean, there's everybody, I mean, and the Maesters, Daenerys herself, I'm sure Cersei, all these people are like, yeah, what, a dead army? Pfft, okay. So you got to do something. The problem is I'm not sure that, you know, this whole pack of wandering dead things is wandering all loose again. You know, they're not onesie-twosie off into the woods just roaming around like a walker from The Walking Dead. They're kind of all collectively moving into the horde. And so trying to get one might be a problem. And for whatever reason, it just strikes me as this could not end well. Somebody might die, and I'm hoping it might just be they bring a couple of red shirts with them and they die. You know, Star Trek reference. We don't hawk trek here. Sorry. So, you can't go through this unscathed because you're going to go north of the wall. That's dangerous to begin with, and then you're going to try and mess with things that can break swords, and you can cut them in half and cut parts off of them, and that they still live. I mean, are they even bringing any dragon glass with them to help fight? I don't know. They didn't explain much about their plan other than just like you said, well, let's huddle together. All right, who's got a sack? They didn't even say that. They might not even have brought a sack. How are they going to drag it back? I don't know.
Sure. Everyone's fine. Lord of the Friend Zone, Ser Jorah, goes beyond the wall on this fool's quest, but everybody loses their freaking mind, including Dany, when Jon Snow decides to go. Jules, did Dany tip her hand with a reaction to Jon's inclusion to this trip north of the wall?
I mean, seriously, because here's poor Jorah. He has been through it just to get to her. And it's like every time somebody else comes in and cock blocks him immediately. It is hysterical to me that it's like, oh, okay, you think you need to do this because you came back to serve me? Cool. Oh, wait, Jon, you're going to leave? Don't do that. I mean, I felt bad for Jorah actually in that moment because you knew, I do think that maybe Dany had resolved herself to the fact that Jorah was dead. So to have him come back, it's like, oh my God, that's so great. You're not dead. But maybe those feelings of anything are just, you know, kind of smothered because she thought he was dead this whole time. And, you know, she's on to new burning flames of something with Jon. Lust, love, whatever.
I feel like she tipped her hand by going along with this plan because that's the only way I can rationally think of, like, why would she go through with this? Like, this doesn't make sense from her perspective. Like, I think it's a ridiculous plan, but I get it from Jon's perspective. Like, I got to convince them, so we got to go get one of these bodies. It makes no sense, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. But from her perspective, like, so she's gonna just hit the pause button and wait for him to come back with the white. She barely believes him to begin with, and she's going to stop her conquest of Westeros. Like, that doesn't make sense at all to me, unless, you know, in her mind, the seeds have been planted for some kind of a relationship and, you know, or joining of the houses with Jon Snow. So like that's the only way that I can see, you know, the only way I'm allowing myself to believe that is that she did tip her hand by going along with this ridiculous plan.
But couldn't she also be maybe having some realization about the possibility it's a true threat and just kind of being more open to the idea of it?
Then they could hop on a dragon and go fly over the wall and take a look for themselves.
Yeah, that's a better idea.
So I get it. Like, again, I don't want it to be bad writing, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out, okay, why this just doesn't make sense. So why would she just pause everything to, you know, she just decimated their army. Like, the war can be won for her very easily. I mean, granted, she doesn't want to go in and sack King's Landing and burn everything to the ground, but she's on the verge of winning the war. So why stop hit pause and hang out and wait to kind of find, set up an armistice to go fight the White Walker. Like, it just doesn't make sense unless she sees Jon as a really important ally, and more than just an ally, but maybe, but somebody who she can unite the houses with and you become united with against Cersei and against the Lannisters.
Back at Winterfell, as the anti-King of the North rhetoric is ramped up by Glover and Royce, and where was Lady Mormont during all this? But Lady Sansa listens to their concerns, and Arya isn't pleased. You need Mormont around to slap Royce and Glover around every time they open their mouth. I don't know why she wasn't included. Maybe she's in school.
She had a play date.
You always like nice things. They made you feel better than everybody else. Ryan, where do you side on this? Are you Team Arya or are you Team Lady Littlefinger? Is she right? Is Sansa's wheels turning?
I'm always Team Arya. I think Arya is my favorite character on the show. But I think it was maybe she was unnecessarily provoking her, I guess. So I felt like that was a little strange. We saw Littlefinger finally not just being the kind of standing in the background twirling his mustache, but actually being Littlefinger for once. And so I would have liked it if that scene happened first, and then we saw Arya, start to question Sansa. But, at the end of the day, it also goes to show that, relationships don't change. And even though, they had an adversarial relationship for a long time, and then they were separated for a long time. And obviously coming back together, there's a reunion and they're warm and fuzzy feelings initially, but at the end of the day, they still are adversaries in a lot of ways. They're completely different. So it makes sense that there would still be some tension between them, and I guess, we're only privy to, little snippets of their lives. So maybe, there were other moments that led to Arya kind of wanting to question Sansa directly and wanting to kind of create some more tension that we don't see. But I thought it was a little strange that she was a little too aggressive. And, where I can understand after Littlefinger set her up, I can see her being more aggressive. So, I think I'm Team Arya, but, I understand where everything's going. And I understand, I think neither person is wrong in this situation.
Okay, while I'm with you, Ryan, and I'm completely Team Arya as well, and I think where her downfall in this is that Arya has seen enough politicking in the world to understand where that needs to go. So Sansa's playing a politic game, right, where she's trying to keep the houses appeased so that they will continue to do their things for the Starks and for the North, where Sansa just sees somebody that she cares about kind of getting beaten up verbally by these other people, and it's like, why aren't you standing up for him? That's our brother. And she doesn't play the politic game. And so Sansa's not wrong in how she's handling it. Arya's just upset because, and I think it's, when she left, she was so young. And Jon was obviously her favorite sibling. And anytime somebody's going to verbally attack Jon or physically attack Jon, I think Sansa's going to be, not Sansa, Arya's going to be right there, ready to just strike out and lash out and let anybody have it. And at that moment, I think it was more that Sansa was the thing that she could yell about to that. I mean, because she was looking for things like, oh, this is mother and father's room, and so she's looking for things to start a fight about.
I think it's the distrust that Littlefinger's already brought just by having him there. I do think she went a little hard on the pate and Sansa. I mean, if Arya was to hand Sansa her sword and she was to try to kill somebody, she'd be like, you're not doing this right. Well, for as much as Sansa knows about sword fighting, Arya knows about diplomacy. She may see it, but she doesn't understand diplomacy because she went back to that default Stark position of, well, just chop their heads off if they don't do what you want. And that's not how you keep alliances together. That's not how you build friendship. There's got to be trust. There's got to be conversations like this. And a lot of things in diplomacy are going to be said that you're not going to necessarily like. And that holds over to real world application anymore, where whenever something is said that somebody doesn't like, they all just shut down and get angry. And that's what Arya kind of did. Well, they're attacking Jon. Well, they're not always going to agree with Jon. That's diplomacy. That's life. She kind of showed a little immaturity in that moment.
I was going to say, because she was putting together pieces that weren't necessarily true either, like her pointing out that Sansa had her parents' quarters or chambers, but John was the one who gave Sansa those chambers. Arya doesn't know that, but he was the one that said, hey, I want you to stay in there. And it wasn't like she just demanded to be in there. So those are bits of information that are important to kind of know that she's not just demanding to be, Lady Stark, and everything that comes with it that Arya is kind of missing.
Well, yeah, I think the part of it is it's the argument was kind of ostensibly about their kind of talking behind about John or about the quarters, but it really just comes down to Sansa and Arya having unresolved issues. I mean, it really is that. And so I think that was what the whole scene was about, is that, it's not really about any of these they're all benign. What it really is that there are unresolved issues between them. And now that they're back in Winterfell together, and again, the Warm and Fuzzies is over, it's like there's still stuff to deal with. And Littlefinger, this is his opportunity to kind of take advantage of it, because his one chance is really to create enough tension between the Starks that he can kind of find his way and, likely find his way riding on Sansa. So, literally and figuratively, I guess. But,
hey now.
So I did like the way the scene plays out, because it does show, their own issues, and also there's Littlefinger's opportunity. We've been kind of watching him kind of hang out, staring in the background, but now he gets to be Littlefinger, which I enjoy, because I think he's one of the more interesting characters when he's actually given stuff to work with.
Last time I was here, I killed my father with a crossbow. Last time I was here, you killed my son with wildfire. IG, at this point of the story, who despises Tyrion more, Davos or Jaime? And all things considered, do you think the Lannister brother reunion was a step in the positive direction?
I don't know. I think while Jaime might be a little upset at Tyrion, I don't think he despises him. And I think, honestly, Davos kind of likes him a little bit. Even though technically he killed his son, he's learned a little bit of respect for Tyrion, because, go back a few episodes to when they're in the throne room and he's saying, I do like him and he's trustworthy and I think you should listen to him in front of Davos about Jon Snow. I think that led some credence to Davos about Tyrion. I like the play back and forth, and I liked both meetings, but, I was a little disappointed that Jaime wasn't a little more warm to his brother. I expected him. They both know who their father was, and they both know what was happening and what could lead Tyrion to shooting his father with a crossbow. That being said, maybe Jaime's still harboring a little bit of ill will because Tyrion wasn't there. All their life he'd had Tyrion to kind of fall back on, and I think Tyrion might have been, Jaime's Jiminy Cricket for the most part. He's there leading some conscience to him.
Or do you think it might have been a little bit of guilt, Ig? Because his actions directly resulted in what Tyrion did. Maybe he's angry because Tyrion put him in that position. Like, I let you out and you couldn't just fucking leave. You had to go kill our dad too. Do you think maybe that's wrapped into it a little bit?
It very well could be. That's a great point. And unfortunately, we're not going to get any real resolution anytime soon to this, because they are still, while they're still brothers, they're still on opposite ends of the playing field. It's rough that way, and I wonder if at some point one of them is going to start pulling punches to try and protect the other. And that's where I think Dany's weakness could come in if Tyrion starts to do things just to try and protect Jaime, because I think Tyrion does care enough about Jaime still to want to protect him. So looking forward, even into next season, I think that is going to come into play more often, where it may lead to a complete flip in what's going on, and still leads credence to my belief that Tyrion may be snitching, maybe sending information back into the Red Keep.
Jules, and just like that, we all lose our favorite Game of Thrones joke, as Gendry has been hiding all along in plain sight and not still rowing the boat as we all hoped. Your thoughts on a fan favorite suddenly reappearing back in the mix after seasons of being absent, and the showrunners giving a nod to the fans with the mention of him still possibly being in that boat?
Yeah, that was a great nod, and Davos was hysterical this whole episode, but I love that he had said that, because it would have been it needed to be in there. It had to be in there. I was happy to see Gendry. I had heard that he was going to be coming back this season, but then I'd almost forgotten about it. And even when he said he was going to Flea Bottom, I was thinking, why is he going into Flea Bottom? So the idea that when he finally, they start to show the scene and they're making the swords, I immediately was like, oh, this is going to be Gendry. So I was really excited to see him come back and kind of see, what his trajectory is going to be in all this. Because ultimately, I'm one of those fans that's hoping for Gendry and Arya to reconnect. Because I'm kind of hoping he will soften her a little bit. Whether that's going to happen, it remains to be seen. But I'm glad to know he's back in the mix and hopefully we'll see him meet up with her.
Ryan, one of the biggest knocks on The Sopranos was all the loose ends left after the show was over. What happened to the bug lamp? What happened to the guy in the Pine Barrens? What the hell happened to Tony at the end of the season finale? Do you think part of the reason why Game of Thrones is such a superior show is not leaving these questions go unanswered?
I wouldn't say so. I think that there are definitely loose ends that if they weren't tied up, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I think one of the things that makes the show and the books great there are so many open-ended questions, and there's so much room for theories and it's insane the amounts of like the crazy just out there theories that there are based on just little bits and nuggets of information. So I think the attention to detail is what makes it such a good show. And I think that bringing in a situation like this where they brought Gendry back, they let it happen. I don't want to say organically, but organically. They allowed it to happen in a situation that made sense rather than, just kind of shoehorning him in just to do it. So, to answer your question, I don't know that necessarily is what makes it such a great show, but that they do find the right times to bring in these characters again, instead of just kind of throwing it in when it's just to do it. I like that about the show. And I don't like, when they do go the route of kind of somebody shows up randomly that in a situation doesn't make sense. I don't love that when it happens. So I like that the show, most of the time, they really nail it as far as when to bring characters back and when to kind of call back to previous seasons or previous episodes or other characters. And still waiting on one loose end.
Well, being thousands of miles and several time zones away, if I could hear Ryan George, I would disagree with him. I think this absolutely makes this the best show on TV. The fact that they know the fans want the answer to these questions, and they make sure that we get them rather than, cut to black and we never know what happened to Jon Snow. I was so frustrated with the way that show ended. It's still to this day, I'd love to go back and rewatch it, but just knowing the way it ended, it sours the complete experience for me. I don't know much about swinging swords, but I know about this holds up giant warhammer. IG, sharing the same brain as I do, did you just mark out at Gendry's choice of weapons?
Oh, it just got me all kinds of excited and warm and fuzzy, and I was like, oh, he's got his dad's type of weapon. Look at that. Oh, my God. And it had a stag on it. Oh, I was so hot. I was like, look at that. Oh, that was amazing. I was so excited by that. And I mean, you really had to be paying attention to get as excited as I got about it. I mean, you got to know that, Robert Baratheon did not carry around a sword. He had a hammer. He carried a big war hammer around with him. He didn't swing swords. He'd beat you to death. And there's Gendry, man, just like the old man. And putting the stag on it and carrying it around, knowing his history and knowing where he came from, just sells it. It's so great.
What did you think about Ryan? Is he embracing the Baratheon mindset?
Seemingly, yeah. I think for somebody who never knew his dad, I get, and I guess if you grow up your whole life, you don't have a dad, and then you find out your dad was king, was the previous king, you'd probably idolize him. So I think it was really cool. Like seeing the Warhammer was awesome. Like that was a really awesome moment. I was like, oh my God, that's really cool. And it made perfect sense and a great way to kind of do a little bit of fan service, but also real, development of the character. All of a sudden we can see where his mind has been and where his head's been over the last few years, and just the quickness with which he was ready to, all right, I got my stuff. Like he was like waiting for that moment for years. So I really loved that scene and the way it plays, because again, with very little dialogue, just with kind of visual cues, we see, all right, he's been, he did the smart thing to do as far as, kind of hiding in plain sight, but he was miserable there, and he was waiting to get out, and he was probably thinking about the fact that, that they killed his father and who his father was, and again, idolizing his father. And then, it's the point where he forged this amazing warhammer to be like his father, and obviously knows how to use it like his dad. So I think there was a beautiful amount of kind of character development just built into that scene, just with again how he reacted to Davos, how he was ready to leave. I just really loved the way all of that played out. That
was funny. It was like there was no 2 weeks notice or anything. His suitcase was packed underneath the bench there waiting to leave. But my question was, did Davos tell him before he sent him rowing off, I'm going to come find you or something?
I don't think so. I think he was just ready. For somebody that has nothing in their lives, the second that I have a chance to have something, I'm going, I'm ready. This is, and I think that was the mindset. Like, he was so angry about the things that had happened that the first opportunity that he gets a chance to jump in the fray, that's what he's going to do. Jules, from bribing the Gold Cloaks to having a cover story in place, was it nice to not see Sir Davos, but Davos the smuggler in action?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously isn't a fighter. He lets you know that every time there's a possibility there will be fighting happening. But he obviously uses his brain to make sure that he's going to be covered in all ways. And I wasn't expecting that fermented crab there for sure.
Well, have you ever gotten any evidence that any of your dates might have used fermented crab while you were out with them?
So many dates. I mean, I can't count all of them. Mainly my husband. But anyway, so basically, I think that Davos, he was on point. He had everything set up. I was a little bit like when Tyrion came walking around, I was like, duck, hide, something. And he just kept walking. I was a little surprised by that because he is obvious being a dwarf, just plain and simple. Davos really did. He covered his end of the bargain as much as he could when he told Tyrion, hey, I don't fight. So he tried to do what he could. But luckily, he had picked up Gendry, and Gendry was armed and ready.
That was a great line, too. This is Gendry. Yeah, he'll do it.
There was I listened to a podcast earlier that, and I'm forgetting, I just don't want to, it's not my idea, but that he was very Han Solo-like in that scene. And you really get that vibe. Like, he was completely like a Han Solo type. And yeah, I really I love that the scene before where they're like, we need to smuggle Tyrion, and everybody slowly looks over at Davos. And yeah, it was really cool to see Davos the smuggler instead of Davos the hand or Davos the surrogate parent. It was really cool. And obviously he's very good at it. And I love I loved like seeing him in that role is really, really fun.
Dead men, dragon, and dragon queens, whatever stands in our way, we will defeat it. For ourselves, for our house, and for this. Ryan, did she just highwind the shit out of Jaime? Were you not only surprised about the restraint she showed and the wisdom, but the bun in the oven?
Yeah, I had a weird feeling about the bun in the oven. I don't know. I just thought that would be an interesting place to go with them as a unit, as characters. Does this rehumanize Cersei? How does it change, her motivations? It was an interesting scene. I think you realize Cersei is all or nothing, in this, but at the same time, if there's a child involved, does that change how she thinks? I guess not, at least at this stage. It seems like she's still all or nothing. You just wonder how much of this is going to weigh on Jaime, and if there's a breaking point for him, or if he's Team Cersei all the way, or if at some point it's just like, I can't do this. It seems like he's suffering a little bit. He's been suffering, but I think especially after last episode, you wonder, just how much Jaime has left in him, or maybe he doesn't have anything left, and he's just completely under her control, and he's just completely broken. I don't know. I think it's interesting where they're going. I think I like the scene, and looking forward to seeing where their relationship goes, especially now with this new revelation.
The Lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep. IG, Cersei pumps the brakes on this heartwarming moment with the "never betray me again" line. Do you think Jaime peed just a little?
Undoubtedly. It's like, oh, Come on. Jamie is, I got to give credit, as hard as he's gotten beaten up by Cersei all this time, he's lost his hand trying to get back to her. He's done everything he can to try and prove himself to her, and she just still keeps him just whipped all the time. And he puts up with it constantly. I don't know. I give him credit for not beating the ever-loving snot out of her. I mean, I don't condone violence against women, but, this is his sister. So, I mean, siblings kind of have that other thing going on. So maybe he could beat her a little bit because, oh, my goodness, the amount of stuff he's put up with her. And, yeah, I mean, the whole pregnancy thing and don't betray me again and all of that stuff together. He's got to be just shitting bricks at this point. It's got to be a little odd.
I think it's ridiculous she even said it because I don't feel like he betrayed her. He came right back to her the very next scene or 2 scenes later after meeting. He didn't know about the meeting. Bronn set up the whole thing. It's not like he knew about it. And so here he is stuck in this meeting all of a sudden. He went and immediately told her about it. It's not like it happened, although the time frames are all kind of wonky, but it's not like it happened like a year later he told her. He told her about it immediately. And if you ask me, she betrayed him because she knew the meeting was going to happen and didn't tell him. So where she came up with "you betrayed me" is a little bit beyond me.
Well, we could have used the 24 clock there because did Jamie give it a couple hours to make sure Tyrion got away? We don't really know. There's no frame of reference there. So he could have waited a day. He could have waited, a few minutes. We don't know. He already let him get away once. So she's already got this "don't betray me" idea in her head. But did he come immediately from the meeting and tell her? It's hard to tell without any kind of frame of reference. My name is Gendry, Your Grace. I'm Robert Baratheon's son. His bastard son. Jules from the file of "Screw you guys, I do what I want." Davos is completely ignored and Gendry comes correct at the King of the North. What were your thoughts on their meeting?
I thought this was really fun. I mean, obviously there's not a lot of time to develop things in this show, like friendships and whatnot. So you're going to have to sort of cut to the chase on this. Clearly they want Jon and Gendry to be friends. And I appreciate the fact that it's kind of like, I believe Ryan said earlier, when, you have a father that you find out was the king, you're proud and everything. And I think Gendry was like, "Hey, yeah, I appreciate your help there, Davos, but I've been sitting around years waiting to get into the mix of things, and I'm coming exactly about who I am. I'm not some guy, that you just picked up along the way. I am Robert Baratheon's son. You are Ned Stark's son. We're going to be friends. I'm here to help. Let's get this moving."
It's kind of one of those things, too, like, did I just make a best friend?
Yep.
Because you see their fathers in both of them. Like, when they start teasing each other and right away Jon Snow gets angry, you see Ned all over the place in that moment. I loved that, and I really hope that they both survived this trip, which they're headed to kind of develop this relationship a little bit, because this is the Ned and Robert we deserve. And I'll tell you, if they do a spinoff and they don't go back and revisit these characters, even if they need to be recast as younger components, I think they're doing a show a complete disservice. I don't care about thousands of years ago. I care about during the Targaryen rebellion. And I realize that'll be an expensive idea to do, but that's what people actually care about. That's what we want to actually see. Don't give me Sons of Anarchy, the Hispanic biker gang chapter, or don't give me a prequel. Don't do that to us. Give us the storyline that we care about, or just let the series stand on its own. I love the whole "I'm not hiding anymore" mindset either. Clovis be damned. I'm Gendry. I'm Robert, I'm done hiding. I'm here to make my mark on the world. I thought that was a brilliant scene.
That's got to be the name, though. You tried to make me be Clovis, and that's a pretty lame name. You couldn't have given me something better. So that could all be Davos's fault. No, you're Clovis. Come on, could at least.
So if he named him something
Hansel or something
cool like Max Powers,
yeah,
then he would have stayed a low key and undercover.
You got it.
What does an annulment mean, Ryan? I mean, is that when a man sets his lawful wife aside? One of the biggest questions in Westeros' history was just answered, and Sam missed it. Obviously, he's had enough. He's had enough of the Citadel. But did his ending there come too quickly?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was like one of those issues with, I don't want to say it's bad writing, but it's that the show is going at such a breakneck pace that we don't have time to sit and watch Sam at the Citadel. So, I think we could have used more time with him there, but for the purpose of the story that they're trying to tell and they're trying to finish telling, in less than 10 episodes, Sam's got to go. And yeah, I think that scene was interesting. Obviously, it's one of the biggest revelations of the entire show, and I guess that divorce is too modern of a word to use, so they use annulment. It's crazy that they, just one of the biggest revelations in the show, just completely over Sam's head, because he's so hyper focused on what he needs to deal with. So I wonder if they revisit that, like if he and Gilly revisit the books and he realizes it and tells John, or if we get a warg, not a warg, but if Bran has one of his visions and tells John, I wonder how this gets revealed. And also I think for the kind of casual viewer who maybe doesn't get that reference, how do they go about actually, putting it out there? Like, this is what, this is the situation. But yeah, it's a huge revelation that just was kind of thrown out there for a couple seconds.
But that's going to come. Here's the thing. Sam doesn't have the other side of the information. So knowing that annulment and remarriage happened does not still put John in the picture for Sam. Sam doesn't know that's where John came from. So that'll pass off completely. Like, him just dismissing that makes us kind of anxious, but it makes sense why Sam doesn't know. Because as far as Sam knows, John is Ned Stark's bastard. That's all it is. He doesn't know any different. And so when he gets, I'm sure Sam is headed for Winterfell, because that's where the stuff is happening, and he's going there to lend whatever help and be a part of whatever's going on, and it's happening at Winterfell because that's where John went. So he's heading there because Bran's there. Bran has this other side of the knowledge. They'll talk. It'll come together, because once you say something to Sam, I think it sticks in. So her having read that to him, whether she took the book or not, he's going to know the annulment happened, the marriage happened, R+L = J legitimized. He's got rightful claim to the throne. All of these things are going to kind of push in together. So it may have seemed like a throwaway moment and bad writing if you don't think about he doesn't have all the parts of the story to put together. So it really doesn't matter yet. It's good that they mentioned it. We as fans get excited, but we need it to push to that next level.
Ryan, do you find it interesting storytelling that we're a step and a half in front of the characters in the story?
Yeah, no, and actually in this case, I think it's actually good writing, because at the end, at this stage, Benioff and Weiss, especially now that they're beyond the books, they're writing for the fans. So, we see this to me, there's been a lot of fan service this season, some a little too meta for my liking, but at the same time, like for example, when Davos mentions that Gendry's been rowing, or he wondered if he'd still been rowing, part of me, I chuckled, but then I was like, is that too meta? But at the end of the day, they are writing this for the fans. So I think that I actually like that. It's a throwaway line and a throwaway moment that will, I think, come to fruition later on, and I really like that they threw it in there. So I do like that they kind of play with it, because we are, at the end of the day, we're a step ahead. And even, to the point where I think George R.R. Martin's kind of lamented the fact that, like, people have been able to kind of figure out every little detail of his story. It's got to be frustrating. So I think to kind of throw us bones here and there is kind of fun and works well.
Coming and growing up playing D&D, Arya has become every bit of the classic D&D rogue archetype, with lockpicking and hide in shadows, and now it looks like she may even be fighting with 2 weapons. IG, unfortunately, she gets little-fingered. Is she outmatched when it comes to this game of spy versus spy? Do you think that, and how long is it before Littlefinger's tomfoolery costs him his life?
She's a little overmatched at the moment, but I think the reason she's overmatched is all of her emotion of being back with her family, being back at Winterfell, right? She wants everything to kind of be as it was, except that now she's a little psychopath killer. Other than that, she wants dad back, she wants brothers back, and Bran isn't helping, sitting out like, looking pretty goth next to the tree. Sansa's like glammed out, trying to be, the new Kim Kardashian of the North. So she's the only one still acting like she used to act, except now she could kill you with a stare. If you put her and Lyanna Mormont together, they could rule the galaxy. But here's the thing. Littlefinger is playing a dangerous game. Littlefinger is really putting himself in a place where if this doesn't work, if he gets caught plotting against each other, I don't want to be the one to cross Arya. Arya is too dangerous to cross because Arya will just simply put you on her list, and then you're going to come right back off the list. But a cross through instead of an erase. Because I think the Hound probably got erased because he helped her a lot. Because the Hound was on the list. I think, she said a couple episodes, not anymore. It might have been last season even that the Hound is not anymore on the list. It can't. I'm not sure Littlefinger is going to make it out of this season. I think he probably will, just because, he's such a charismatic character, and he adds strife and emotion and tension to the series, and it does really well with it. So maybe he'll make it to next season, but maybe not, because he's really pushing buttons, and it may come back and bite him.
Well, if he doesn't, Jules will come find you. Isn't it your job to talk him out of stupid ideas like this? How many queens are there now? Which one are we trying to convince? The one with the dragon or the one who fucks her brother? Ryan, your thoughts on the unlikely allies, their mission, now including the Brotherhood Without Banners, their fate, and the episode?
Again, it's a little rushed that all of a sudden they all kind of met together, that Jon leaves one scene and he's up at Eastwatch, the next scene. But I liked, again, I think the plan makes no sense, but I couldn't help but kind of get amped up when just them, getting the Hound and Beric and Thoros and Tormund, they're all together, and then just kind of seeing that the group leaving to go north, to go find the White. I couldn't help but get amped up and excited for next week's episode. As far as this show, as with a lot of the other episodes this season, I think every scene is really good. If you just look at each individual scene is almost an A+ scene, whether it's visually, like some stunning visuals with Drogon on the hill, even Bran, that scene with Bran, which I don't think we talked much about, but with the Ravens, that was a beautifully shot scene. I really liked that scene. Jon, and petting Drogon. I think there were some great visuals throughout. Again, every scene is just so well acted, so well staged. Gets emotional when you need to get emotional, tense when it needs to be tense. There's some great humor. So I think, if I'm just judging by the scenes, I'd almost have to give it an A+ or a 9.5 or 10. But I think overall things just are still moving a little too fast for my liking. I don't love this plan. I don't really understand it. I feel like they could have come up with something better. And I'm not quite buying that Daenerys would kind of go from burning a couple people alive who won't bend the knee to this holding pattern to wait and see if Jon, will be successful in his endeavor to bring back a White. And then again, how long will that take for them to sail there, do whatever they got to do and sail back? That could be months. So
about 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm having a little like the logistics of the show are bothering me, in how they're playing with time now, and B, with how they're making people make decisions in order to serve this kind of need to get finished, and it feels rushed. So I think, I feel like they're rushing to an endpoint where I never felt that before with the show. So I think this episode, I'll give an 8.5. Again, I think it's really a strong episode, great acting, some great scenes. But I'm just like kind of logistically, some of the things, a little problem areas for me that I hope that they're able to tie up over the next couple episodes. And I may just have to give up on this idea that they're going to take their time, because they're not. Again, it's like like 8 or 9 episodes left in the entire show. So things are just going to be moving at this pace. And I think I need to just sit down and say, all right, that it is what it is. I got to stop reviewing or thinking about the show based on, kind of previous seasons and how slow moving things were. And this is what the show has become now. So yeah, 8.5 for me.
Yeah, I definitely, I know Ryan's talked about it moving at breakneck speeds this season so far, and I have felt like it was fast, but last night's episode is the first time I really felt like it was moving at breakneck speeds, where I was like, wow. I mean, just from scene to scene, kind of like, when Jamie came back to tell Cersei everything that had happened, she knew everything already. And I get kind of confused how you can find out everything that happened. I'm sure he immediately went to her. So how does she know everything that happened before he even got to fill her in? But I do take issue as well with some of the fast writing. I felt like there was a lot of reunions in this episode, as far as the convenience in the end of, I know Thoris. Oh, look, you're the Hound. Oh, hey, here's Gendry. All the ins and outs of the new Magnificent Seven group of guys that you've got going out to find this one White Walker. Which I also thought, again, was a very kind of a weird idea, because it's like, are you just hoping to find some random White Walker out there? Like you said, it's not Walking Dead where that happens all the time. But this, again, was a great episode still, because when you're talking about Game of Thrones, their worst episode is the best episodes of most series. So you can't really go wrong. I was happy, though, to see Gendry. I was happy to see Jorah come back. I was happy to see all these reunions happen. And I do hope that it doesn't, we don't have to continue to suspend a lot of disbelief when it comes to certain time jumps and whatnot. I'm very interested to know how everything's going to work out with Littlefinger and Arya. And I would definitely say this episode for me is probably about an 8.
Eastwatch to me was like a Coldplay album, a bunch of tender moments and the perfect amount of mixed emotions. It was the perfect slow burn episode, even though it was far from slow burn. They gave us tons of reunions and chance meetings that I hadn't even considered, like what happens when you put Jon Snow and Gendry in a room together. I never even thought about that. So seeing that was great. I mean, Davos brought a lot of funny into the show. I love him and Gendry together. I love watching Jon Snow and Gendry interact. It was like watching a young Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon kind of go back and forth. I hope they live through this so we can explore it a little bit more. A really interesting dynamic between Sansa and Arya. They found their own footing as far as hating each other. And we got the most badass D&D group of all time as Tormund and the Bannerhood Without Brothers joined Jon and Gendry, and they wandered out into the wild to go try to find this walker. It looks like an insane adventure. I can't wait to see it. Even though I do have a lot of problems with the structure of Eastwatch, I give it a 9 because, like Ryan said, a lot of the scenes stand on their own.
Eastwatch was a great episode. Unfortunately, it fell a little bit short as far as Game of Thrones, but it was still a great episode. And what I look at on this is just a lot of resetting of the pieces on the chessboard to get us ready for the final push. You getting your rooks in place and your knights in place. We're going to go. And it's going to be a full-out just sprint to the end. 9 episodes coming. That's it. So we get 9 hours, although some of these episodes are going to be a little bit longer. That's fine. It's basically 9 hours of Game of Thrones after this week, and it's going to be so much happening. I know there's a lot to look forward to, but just like Cinik said, we got this great group going forth, and the Hound, when he was in that cell telling Thoros of Myr to just shut up, because, you're going on about the Lord of Light. Shut up. We're going to go. You don't have to talk about the Lord of Light. We're going to go. I loved all those moments, and there was so many great things that we've already touched on. I'm not going to touch on them again. Go watch it if you haven't already, and if you have, watch it again, because this is really going to get you ready for the final push. Eastwatch, Game of Thrones, Season 7, Episode 5, Cynic Radio Podcast. We're going to call it an 8.5. Great show, a lot of fun. This week, we're not going to have any more Really and What's Up for you because we got another overtime show. So that being said, you've reached the end of episode 44 of the Cynic Radio podcast. I'm Igrahi, and with me is the man who obviously loves ice cream a little bit too much, Cynic. Jules has joined us, and from all the way over in the third world, Ryan George came via remote. We had a great time talking to you. We'll be back next week with the next episode of Game of Thrones. Maybe some more surprises. You got to tune in to find out. Until then, send us your comments, questions, concerns, and coupons for ice cream. Cynic really needs them. To CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. And find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. Also, head on over to tpublic.com and search for Cynic, CINIK, and go ahead and get your own Cynic Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, stickers, well, you name it, we got it. It's all available for you right there at tpublic.com. We had a great time. We'll be back for you next week. Like, listen, subscribe, and share. We love every last one of you. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.
God be with you, Dickin. We'll miss you.